Hey everybody, it's Ian, and today we're going to be working on a password reset feature for YelpCamp using Node Mailer and Gmail. So initially I had followed this tutorial right here, and it's pretty good. The guy uses Express Generator, which we already have our Express application, so we don't need that. And then he uses, I think he uses Jade for the template engine, so I converted all that to EJS. Basically, I just borrowed the Node packages that he's using, some of them. I know Colt uses Passport Local Mongoose for the user authentication, so I went ahead and customized this tutorial to be able to use Passport Local Mongoose as opposed to doing everything from scratch the way this guy's doing it. I'm not going to show you how to put all the code in line by line. Instead, I'm just going to go over the code that I have in my application, so you'll know where to put it when you're going through the source code that I'm going to provide to you through GitHub. So for starters, and I'll put this link in the description, the GitHub where I have the source code is under a password reset branch on YelpCamp Refactored, and you'll be able to see all the routes inside of the routes folder, and then inside package.json we're going to have some of these packages that we ended up using. Alright, so let's go through the source. Well, first of all, let's demo the app so you can see kind of what happens. So we go to our application. I'm logged in right now, so I'm going to log out. And I'm going to look for /forgot is the URL that you go to. And basically this is where you're going to go if you forgot your password and you want to reset it. So I have a user. I can't figure out how to log in because I forgot my password. So I enter the email associated with that user. Learn to code, can't spell learn to code, info@gmail.com. And if everything's set up correctly, when I click reset password, it'll send the email. It'll say, hey, the email has been sent to so-and-so with further instructions. So before we go to that, I also want to point out that if you enter an email that does not exist, it'll send you back an error saying, hey, you can't do that. So now if I go check my email, I have an email here, and you can customize the title, and you can customize the body of the email and who it comes from. So I click on this link here. It takes me back to my website. It has a token in the URL, at which point the token is enabled for an hour. So if you don't change your password within that hour time window, then it will expire and you won't be able to use that token anymore. So we go in here and we say, okay, we want the new password to be password. So we type that in, update password. It's going to log me in automatically after it changes it, but if you want to test it, you can log out, log back in, and this is the username that's connected with that email using the password, and we're in. Okay, so let's walk through how we made that possible. So first and foremost, I had to add basically all we have to do is add new packages, add new routes, and then add corresponding views for a couple of those routes. Okay, so inside the routes, and I just added all this password stuff into the index.js. This could be inside of a users.js, just depends on how you have it set up. So index is where I have everything to do with registering and logging in, so I might as well have the forgot password stuff here as well. So at the top, you can see that I have my user and my campground model included here, in addition to the boilerplate code that should already be there. And then we've added async by requiring async, and we've added node mailer by requiring node mailer. And then crypto, you don't have to install, you can just require it. So in order to get these two, make sure in your terminal you run, clear that out, something like npm i-s and then async and then node mailer, and let that install. So like I said, crypto is a part of Express or a part of Node, so you don't need to install it. You can just require it. So we have all of our regular routes, no problems here. This is also a regular route, and then log out. So right beneath log out is where I start adding the new routes. So first I have a router.get that goes to /forgot. So if you remember from before, we went to /forgot, and that gave us this view. So we need to make a corresponding forgot view, which I just put right inside of views alongside landing, login, register. So in forgot.ejs, we just have the header partial and the footer partial included, and then we have a row and a column for Bootstrap, and inside the middle of that, or inside the column, we have a form that posts to /forgot. So that form has one input, it's an email input, and the name for it is email. So we're submitting an email and we're going to access it via rec.body.email. So then we submit, and that takes us to the /forgot route. So back in index.js inside the routes directory, we have that get, sorry, not for register, where am I? We have the get for forgot, and then we have the post for forgot. So this is where the form will post to. So we use this async.waterfall method, which is an array of functions that get called one after another. So we have this crypto, and this is where we're using crypto. Remember up at the top, crypto is a part of Node, so we just require it, assign it to the variable crypto. And here we use a .random bytes 20 function error buff, and inside of this callback we create a new variable and we set it equal to buff.toString hex, and when this is done, the token that gets created here is the token that is going to be sent as part of the URL to the user's email address, and then they click that link, and that's that token that expires after an hour. So the next thing that happens here is we look for the email that person has entered. Remember, rec.body.email is coming from the form. So we're finding a user by their email address. And at this point, I'll just take a second to go over to models, user model. If your user model does not have email as a string, then you should probably add that. And it really should be unique so that you can't have multiple users with the same email. So we'll go ahead and save it like that. So email is a type of string, it's unique, and then it's required. That way you don't have people not entering an email when they sign up and not being able to reset their password if need to. So back over in index.js, scroll back down, here we are. If there's no user returned from that user.findOne, then we go ahead and flash an error message saying, hey, there's no account with that email address. And if you recall, that's that red error message whenever I just entered a random email that didn't exist in the database. And we return out of this entire function, redirect with that return, and that basically reloads the forgot route, the get route for forgot, and flashes this red flash message, the error message. Okay, so if there is a user, then we need to set the reset password token equal to token. And then we also need to set the expiration for that. So reset password expires, and then we use the date object now plus 36, what is that, 1 2 3 4 5 6 zeros is an hour in milliseconds. So these two properties also need to be added to your user. So here you can see I've added these, one as a string and the other as a date. So really important, email, reset password token, and reset password expires. Make sure that you add this to your user model. Okay, so if I go back to index.js, we save the user, and then this done function takes error, the token, and the user. And then we're on to the next function in the chain here. So in this next function is where the magic happens with sending the email. So remember, we have NodeMailer, and NodeMailer is the package from NPM that allows us to send mail. Now we have to have some type of service that's going to allow us to send mail. In this case, I'm going to use Gmail. There's some other options, SendGrid, SendPulse, GoDaddy, and so on and so forth. Gmail is pretty simple to set up, and a lot of people have it. If you don't have a Gmail address, you can use one of the other systems or services, or you can just sign up for a free Gmail address. NodeMailer has a create transport method that takes a bunch of options. The options get passed in as an object, and the object has a key service. We tell it as a string, it's Gmail, make sure that's a capital G. And then inside of auth, you pass in your Gmail email address and your password. I'm not going to put my password on here because I don't want you guys hacking into my email. I used process.env.gmail or Gmail password. If you don't know about process.env, go ahead and look up .dotenv, the npm package. That's what I'm using. Or you can do it the way that Colt does it, and from your terminal you can just do and make sure you're inside of the directory for the project. You can do an export, and then Gmail pw is equal to, and then your password here. When you hit enter, it's going to export it for you, and now you'll be able to access it via the process.env.gmail pw. Make sure this is all caps, and that way people won't be able to see your password, especially when you put this on like GitHub or something like that. So here's the mail options. This is what the user is going to see when the email is sent to them. So who it's from, you can put whatever email you want them to be able to reply to. That's what you're going to put here. So I'm essentially sending an email to myself. The subject, this is Node.js password reset. You could put the name of your website, password reset request, something like that. The text, this is the body of the email, and inside of here we're putting, it says rec.headers.host. This ends up being localhost 3000, but this could also be whatever your website address is if you have it in production. And then /reset, and then that token. And then these are escape characters, and they're putting some more text in here. But basically we have a link that someone can click from their email. It'll take them to the form where they can enter a new password. The token will then be used to do some work on the server side that we'll look at in a moment to verify that that user is in fact able to reset their password. Okay, so the last thing we want to do is actually send the mail. So we do an SMTP transport. This is that variable we made earlier with the information about our mailer service. We do a .send mail. We pass in the mail options that we created here, and then we just check in a callback if there's any error. We can go ahead and do a console log telling us that the mail is sent. That's just something that I threw in there. And then a success message. This will go to the user. It'll say, hey, an email has been sent to, and then the email that they entered with further instructions. And that's that green flash message whenever you press the send button or the submit button from the form. The last thing here is if there's no error, then we redirect back to forgot, and that's when this flash message gets flashed. Let's go ahead and walk through that visually. Here's the get for forgot. Again, we enter the email address, we reset password, and this green message here is this success message here, and we got redirected back to forgot where the message got rendered, and that was this here because there's no errors. So this whole waterfall got run through, and then finally we ended up here with no problems redirecting back with the success flash message, and that's where we are now. At this point, the user goes to their email. They have a new email right here, and there's that link. So this whole email here is all of this stuff here that we put inside of mail options, and this line here is what corresponds to this line here. So if you see this really long token here, this alphanumeric token, that is this token variable, and if you recall, that's the one that we made at the very beginning with all this crypto gobbledygook. So the token here got sent here. Here's the user seeing the token. They click on it. Now they're here on the website, and this is /reset/ and then the token. So there's a new form here. We need a get route to handle /reset/ token. So we have this route. You're going to copy and paste this in, but it's also going to render a reset view, and it needs to pass the token into that view as well. So over here inside views, here's reset. Basically same thing as we had with forgot. We have the partial header, partial footer, and then a row, column, and then here's the important part, the form inside of it. And the form's going to submit a post request to /reset using that token, and then we're going to use that token to check against the database to make sure that it's valid, and if it is, then we're going to use whatever's in new password and confirm password, given that they match one another, to update the user's password. Okay, so new password, I'll just do password 123, password 123, update password. And then it's going to tell me, hey, your password has been changed successfully and I'm logged in. Great. So let's go through the routes that make that happen. So back in index.js, down here, here's the route that loads that view that we were just looking at. So first and foremost, we look for a user with that reset password token, passing in the token from the email. Okay, so it's in the parameters rec.params.token. And then we also check reset password expires and make sure that it's greater than date.now. If a user gets returned based on those parameters in this query, then we render the reset view and we go ahead and pass that token in so that it can be put into the form and once again sent back here. Now, if the user doesn't get found or doesn't match, like say for instance the reset password token is expired, or the token is someone's trying to hack it and they enter a fake token, then it's not going to give us a real user. It's just going to send you back to /forgot where you initially entered your email address, and it's going to say, hey, password reset token is invalid or has expired. Now, this is where you enter the new password and then confirm that password. So again, we're using async waterfall. This is just to avoid having to use a bunch of callbacks. This is an array of functions that get called in sequence. And so we have user.findOne based on the same thing as before, reset password token, rec.params.token, reset password expires, greater than date.now. Great, so if we don't get an error and we do get a user back, then we don't have to worry about this portion right here. And we can skip ahead to this if statement that I've created, which is saying, hey, if the first password that they entered into the form is equal to the second password that they entered in, then we can go ahead and reset the password. So Passport Local Mongoose has a method that we can call on the user called setPassword, and all you do is pass in a password. It will do all the salting and hashing and encrypting, all that stuff for you, at which point, as long as there's no error, we have this callback where we can save the user back into the database and log the user in, and then finally we can redirect them down here after we've sent a success email to that user. So before we get to that, we also want to take that user, the same user that we found up here, after we set their password to the new password, okay, and it encrypts it for us, then we want to get rid of reset password token and reset password expires because we no longer need these for that user. So we set them equal to undefined. Now that we've made these three changes to the user, we need to update the user in the database. So we simply call a user.save, which we can use with a callback that says, okay, as long as there's no error, then we can do a rec.login. Now we just log in with that user and we invoke done, passing in the user and the error, or the error and then the user. Okay, this is just more error handling. Hey, the passwords don't match, so that's if this doesn't return true, then we're going to go ahead and redirect them back to the form and say you can't reset your password with a password that doesn't match the confirmation password. Continuing on with the functions in this async waterfall array, we get down to here. Same thing as before. We're going to set up an SMTP transport using nodemailer.createTransport. We're going to pass in all of our information for our mail service, in this case Gmail, so username or email rather, and then password. We have our mail options. This one's a little bit different. It says your password has been changed. So it's just a confirmation saying, hey, you or somebody else changed your password, just thought you might want to know. So this is a confirmation that the password for your account, user.email, has just changed. Now we actually send the mail using those mail options that were created right here. And if there's no error, then we flash the success and we move on to the next function. And at this point, as long as there's no error, we go ahead and redirect back to campgrounds. You'll notice there's a couple places where I'm not doing error handling. That's just for brevity. Make sure that you do that before you push your app to like production. So we redirect back to the home page with the success message, and that's what you're seeing right here. back to the home page, or not the landing page, but the index page for campgrounds, and then the success message. And the user is logged in, and that's thanks to up here where we did a rec.login. Okay, so that's everything for the reset token, the post route. And then once you get down here, this is user profile stuff. That's my other video that I put out the other day if you want to go check that out. So let me just review everything and make sure that I have what I need to have in here. In your user model, I have bcrypt in here. This is not necessary because Passport Local Mongoose is already doing that for us. So in your user model, just make sure that you have an email, make sure it's unique, and then a reset password token as a string, reset password expires as a date. These three are really important. Okay, so now that your user model has been edited, go ahead and go to the routes file where you're going to put all these routes. And so we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 new routes. A get for forgot, a post for forgot, a get for reset token, and a post for reset token. Make sure you paste all of those in and you put all the correct credentials for your Gmail. And then one thing that's really important for Gmail is you have to change some settings for Gmail to allow you to send emails like this. So if we go back to our browser, there's something called less secure apps. So go ahead and go to myaccount.google.com/less secure apps, and it'll pull up this page right here. Make sure that you have the correct email selected, and then you're just going to change this from off, gray on the left. Just click it one time, it'll go on to the right, and then at that point everything should work. You may get an email or you may get something on your phone depending on how your settings are set up, confirming like, hey, you just changed it from less secure off to less secure on. Once you've confirmed that, then you're good to go. And Gmail will let you send emails. The reason they have this is because, well, for instance, here we are entering our password. So we're putting our credentials out there, which is not necessarily the most secure thing, but if you do it the right way, for instance, in a environment variable, then you don't run into some of the problems that you could potentially run into. So I guess it's just Gmail's way of saying, hey, we just want you to acknowledge the fact that you're opening yourself up for potential security issues. In any event, if you're not comfortable with doing that, like I said, there's other services like SendPulse and SendGrid and GoDaddy and so on and so forth. Okay, so other than these routes, you're just going to have the views. I put them directly inside the views directory. If you want, you can put them inside of like the users directory or something like that. So there's the forgot, and then there's reset. And these are white because I don't have my syntax set up. So if you copy and paste everything that I have for these files, the routes, the user, and the views, and then put in your own credentials, then all this should work. If you have any problems, of course, feel free to ask me a question about it and I'll try to help you out. Alright, so that's it for the password reset feature, and I will put the link to the source code in the description. Thanks.